Spotlight is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. It seeks to spotlight people, places, and events from around the Diocese of Youngstown that promote the new gospel of joy called for by Pope Francis. Your program host is Father James Korda.
Hello and welcome to Spotlight. I'm Father Jim Korda. Today we're going to talk about the 75th anniversary of the Diocese of Youngstown, which is going to be celebrated in the year 2018. And joining me in the discussion is Monsignor John Zuraw. Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Monsignor Zuraw is not only the Chancellor of the Diocese, but also the chairperson of this committee that's kind of like spearheading and looking at the 75th anniversary. And before we really get into our discussion about some specifics, let's go back 25 years if we could. You were a younger priest then. I was a little younger myself. The 50th anniversary was really significant for our diocese. It was a milestone. What was so significant about that, but about anniversaries in general?
I think, Jim, one of the aspects of going back 25 years ago is the liturgical celebration that we had on the campus of YSU, where individuals gathered. We gathered as the Church of Youngstown to truly celebrate 50 years, to remember the past, but also to look towards the future. And that's what we're doing now on the 75th. The theme for our 75th is 75 years with pride in the past, with faith in the future. We look at some of the individuals who have gone to their eternal rest, who basically developed the diocese, made the diocese as what it is today. We look at various bishops. Bishop McFadden, the first bishop, he was known as the great organizer. He needed to establish from the very beginning the diocese and the various central offices. Then we moved to Bishop Walsh. Bishop Walsh was the great school builder. If we look throughout the diocese, there are some of our parishes that the school was created first and then the church came later. Bishop Malone, how he implemented the spirit of Vatican II. Then we look at Bishop Tobin. Bishop now is in Providence, but maybe the two great achievements was the Bishop's Appeal, moving it from Catholic Charities to the Bishop's Appeal for Church and Charities, and the capital campaign for the diocese. Now with Bishop Murray, his pastoral plan on evangelization. So we take pride in the past, all that we have accomplished, but more importantly, we have a vision for the future.
And it's interesting because as a member of the committee, that was one of the things that you had brought up and that was discussed, that 75 years, while it is significant, is really pointing us toward another 25 years. So we look forward to the 100th anniversary. And while that's a far way off for many of us, it's still going to be significant. So what are some of the things that we as a church and as a diocese are going to do in preparation for 75 years, but also in anticipation of 100 years?
Okay. Some of the aspects basically for our 75th. We developed a theme. The committee spent a lot of time. Individuals submitted suggestions. Ultimately, one of the main thrusts of Bishop Murray was that we look towards that 100th. So looking at 75 years with pride in the past and faith in the future, we are moving towards that 100th. The liturgical celebrations that will take place, the opening Mass, the closing Mass, center on that great feast of Pentecost, sending forth the Spirit upon the church, renewing the church, looking towards the future. The various celebrations with the various lectures that we'll talk a little bit also about, that academic aspect that has been so important to the Church of Youngstown, realizing through the arts, through the various lectures, how the church is a visible sign for the people here within our geographical area. The archives, not only remembering the past, but allowing the past to shape the future. It's very interesting, as we look at the historical elements over the last 75 years, things that maybe I was not aware of, others are not aware of, but through the media, especially communications, through the working of CTNY, individuals are going to learn something. And that's some of the chief aspects of how we're moving towards the future.
Let's talk about parishes in general, about what some of the things that might go on in their parishes. For example, I know in my parish, I help out at St. Stephen's, Niles on the weekend, and we've kind of developed a whole year of planning once the anniversary starts, that during that year, each month we will do something as a parish that will let the community know that we are in the midst of the diocese's 75th anniversary. So everything that we're going to be doing is kind of geared toward that whole theme, if you will. So what would be some things that you would encourage parishes to consider as we embark on this 75th anniversary and looking towards the 100th?
One of the elements that you described, that St. Stephen's is taking various aspects, incorporating them into their parish life. I think it's important that individuals pay attention to what CTNY is broadcasting. You're going to have an opportunity as, the Church of Youngstown to once again listen to the historical element of the diocese, the historical element of the cathedral itself. CTNY will produce various segments on the various 6 counties of our diocese. Do we know which of the churches originated first? By listening to some of these segments, I learned something. Another aspect deals with education. How do we educate our young people about our diocese? The Catholic schools will use the week for Catholic schools to center on the 75th so that, the students are educated about the diocese. Through our CCD programs also, resources will be developed so that, all students have a greater knowledge of the past and where as a church we need to go towards the future.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but we're going to take a quick break. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
I am Marino.
Je suis Marino.
I am Marino.
I believe that we are all connected to each other, and that is the gift of compassion that unites us and makes us one. It doesn't matter what language, culture, or tradition we come from. We can share compassion wherever we are.
Marino, an American Catholic organization of priests and brothers, has been reaching out to those in need for nearly 100 years in 26 countries throughout the world. Marino dedicates 86 cents of every dollar donated to their programs, and with your help, they can do more. Missioners, workers, volunteers, supporters, we are all Marino.
I am Marino.
Yo soy Marino.
I'm Father Mike, and I am Marino.
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 There is a place where a total stranger will give you their blood. A place where someone you never knew will save your child from drowning. Where a person who doesn't look like you, talk like you, or dress like you will give you shelter after a flood. That place is called America, where we look out for each other. When you help the American Red Cross, you help America.
Welcome back to our show. I'm talking with Monsignor John Zuraw about the 75th anniversary of the Diocese of Youngstown. You know, John, before the break, we were talking about the youth. We know that the committee really has been focusing on different groups in the diocese, and one of those groups is the youth. So what exactly can the youth anticipate in celebration of the 75th anniversary?
One of the requests of Bishop Murray during our year of 75, he asked to look at the sacrament of confirmation, but then also to look at the retreat experiences that our young people are in fact experiencing. Part of our committee for the 75th basically is dealing under the direction of Cindy Case with our youth. The aspect of a centralized retreat plan for parishes' geographical regions. Sometimes individuals scramble as to, you know, who's going to be the speaker, what are we going to talk about, and then what are some of the activities for the young people. With the 75th anniversary, there will be a development of a plan for a retreat that will be utilized throughout the Diocese of Youngstown, centering not only on the experience of who we are as a diocese, but what does it mean to be confirmed in the faith, and how do we carry that out towards the 100th? Because, you know, those that are being confirmed now will be there. We might not be there, but they're going to be there to truly celebrate the 100th. One of the requests of Bishop Murray also was to develop the concept of a regional confirmation. You know, when he first gave us the charge that came through the Presbyteral Council, he wanted one mass confirmation that would take place at a civic center. And we realized very quickly that this was an impossible task, the amount of individuals and the space. So we went back and we started to look at regional confirmations. We're doing that a little bit in the diocese now. At St. Columba, parishes are gathering together. And there is a great theological insight for that. Baptism basically tells us whose we are, okay? The Eucharist centers on what we're called to do. We're called to be the body of Christ. Through the sacrament of confirmation, we are called to serve our local communities and to make the world better. What better way than all those that are being confirmed gathering together with that common mission, with that common goal in mind? So the plans are to utilize in the late 2018, 2019 regional confirmations. Individuals gathering together as the local Church of Youngstown.
We mentioned earlier in our first segment about some of the liturgical celebrations that will take place, and we know that the first one to really kind of kick off the anniversary is actually going to be near the actual date of the founding. Let's talk about that, and what can we anticipate in that celebration?
And we realize our founding was May 15th, 1943. We will begin our year of celebration on May the 20th, 2018, the Feast of Pentecost at St. Columba Cathedral. It's a Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. We will end our year of celebration a year later on June the 9th, 2019, also the Feast of Pentecost, with the closing celebration, 4 o'clock at the cathedral. The liturgical commission that is dealing with the various liturgies are centering on these two primary liturgical events, but some other events. A celebration for the priest of the diocese, a celebration of the deacons of the diocese, the men and women religious, interfaith prayer with many of our brothers and sisters of various churches. 2018, 2019, once again, we have the youth convention here in the Diocese of Youngstown centering on the youth. A liturgical experience is the creation of a song, a hymn, a sacred hymn for the Jubilee year that Dan Lagina is working on. Those of you who have gone to Chrism Mass realize that at the beginning of Chrism Mass, we have a various representation of banners, banners representing our parish community. The thought of the Liturgical Anniversary Committee is to establish 6 banners that represent each of our counties. On those banners will be various symbolic signs representing our parish communities. So that adds something new. It's a new dimension to what has been so successful in the diocese.
You know, one of the elements too is to recall the history of it all. 75 years for us as a diocese is for us really not that many years. When we look at many of the dioceses, for example, Cleveland, Cincinnati, well over 100 years older than we are. So for us, 75 years is a relatively young age. However, we have a rich and long history that we'd like to celebrate. And I know one of the things that we're planning to do here at CTNY is to interview many of those priests and religious who have a long history in our diocese, just to kind of pick their brains and to tell us about some of those early beginnings and some of the things that happened, some of the celebrations that took place over the years, maybe some of the significant events that happened. And so that's going to be one thing that we're planning to do. But I think that whole history element is really crucial. Why is that important for us to remember our history?
It's important to remember our history because we can gain wisdom for the future through the history. A committee that has been established for this 75th deals with the archives of the Diocese of Youngstown under the direction of Father Rich Murphy, who's the president of Ursuline High School, with the guidance of Donna de Blasio and YSU and the Historical Center in downtown Youngstown. They are establishing for us a series of panels that will represent our history, our 75 years here in this local area. And the great aspect of this is that this will also be a connection to YSU, because students at YSU are going to be working on these panels. Individuals will be able to see these various historical symbols, and these various panels will be part and parcel throughout the diocese. Throughout our anniversary year, it will be a traveling archive where individuals in Canton or in Kent or in Ashtabula will take part in this actual celebration. I think you and I remember when we celebrated the 50th. Individuals received via the diocese various historical elements, and they were housed at the Butler. And this gives us an opportunity to get out into the diocese, just not one local area, but throughout the diocese, to experience the richness of who we are.
We're going to talk more about that in a moment, but stay with us. We'll be back.
Well, I've been volunteering for 18, almost 20 years for volunteer chore service for Catholic community services. What I do is help the elderly in their homes so that they can stay in their homes. I do work from shopping to housework to yard work. Most of the people I see don't really have a lot of family, so then I become almost like their family.
I think a lot of times the elderly in our society are forgotten, and that's unfortunate because they're a real important part of our community because they have so much wisdom to share.
Doing this type of work is very rewarding. You can't put it into words because I learned so much from these people, and you learn stuff about yourself too. You learn to see God in a variety of people, in a variety of settings. The other day she told me that every night she When she goes to bed, she thinks about her little angel, when her little angel's going to come and check on her the next day. And that's me, yeah.
Their numbers are growing. More than a year ago, more than a decade ago. More people now living in this state than nearly any state in the Union. 1 out of every 10 families in America. 1 out of every 6 children in America. 33 million Americans teetering on the brink of hunger, sickness, hardship. 33 million Americans descending into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's.
Welcome back to our show. I'm talking with Monsignor John Zuraw about the 75th anniversary of the diocese. One of the areas that we do want to talk about is this lecture series. We know that in the past, lecture series has been going on in different parts of our diocese for different reasons. Let's talk about that lecture series and how is that going to be developed celebrating 75 years.
One of the blessings within the Diocese of Youngstown is that we have already established lecture series. First Friday Club, the Hamilton series, the Bishop Franzetta lecture. And what we're trying to do is to plug into these established groups already and to highlight the diocese. The bishop also has agreed to do a lecture in each part of the diocese, each of our counties, allowing us to look at the historical element of the diocese, but also to be more futuristic. As we move towards that 100th, how is the Holy Spirit working within this church? How do we empower our laymen and women to be effective leaders within the church? Dealing with the various lectures, not only are we going to trace the historical element, but, what are some of the challenges that we face as a Diocese of Youngstown? Because I think, if we're going to face the 100th very realistically, we have to know what are some of our challenges, what are some of our limitations. Aspects of the arts and music. We're truly blessed in this area, with, composers of sacred music, artists. We look at our beautiful churches to highlight, the artistic value of each of these worship centers. The multicultural awareness. We are not of the same cloth, right, but we are different, but we are one. And how do we celebrate that in our 75th? Our interfaith and ecumenical establishments. This is something that, one of our bishops, Bishop Malone, was a chief proponent of. To celebrate his life is to celebrate the ecumenical and the interfaith relationships, what we have with our brothers and sisters of different faiths.
Mm-hmm. One of the other areas, and I know this kind of grew out of the Presbyteral Council, the Priest Council, is this aspect of a social outreach. Mm-hmm. Part of who we are as church is to be concerned about people. Mm-hmm. And unless we're concerned about other people, we really have no right to call ourselves Christians. So what aspect of social outreach is going to be part of our celebration of the 75th anniversary?
There's a committee that has been established entitled the Social Outreach and Service Committee. And they're still in the planning stages. They're looking at various aspects of where the church can be of greatest impact for the future. Whether that be the opiate epidemic, whether that be human trafficking, whether that be a type of domestic violence against individuals. Their task basically is to center on one aspect, to develop that one aspect, but not to let that one aspect end on June the 9th, 2019, but to see that aspect continue and those service aspects be an integral part of who we are as Church of Youngstown.
We've got a few minutes of our left of our show together. The folks that are with us probably are going to be anticipating 75 years. What would you suggest that they do as parishioners, first of all, of their local church and local parishes, and then second of all, as parishioners of the diocese? What should they be involved with, and what should they be aware of?
First and foremost, I truly believe that through the working of CTNY, we're going to be able to communicate our history. So I would invite the people of the Diocese of Youngstown to listen to our various shows, such as Spotlight, listen to Wineskins, to listen to those various segments that develop things that we might not know, but through 30 or 60 seconds, we're going to gain an insight as to who we are as a diocese. I think it's also important is that we have parishioners that are out there that were part of that transition from Cleveland to Youngstown. 1943 wasn't that long ago. So we have men and women who are able to communicate to us an oral history and, allow us as a diocese to listen to that history, because that history is going to have vital importance as we move towards that 100th.
What else would you say to the priests in our diocese? How would they be involved in celebrating 75 years?
Priesthood is changing. We know within the Diocese of Youngstown, our numbers are getting smaller and smaller. But even though the numbers are getting smaller and smaller, we anticipate with hope that the Holy Spirit will not abandon us, but ministry is going to be different in the next 25 years than you and I have come accustomed to. This 30 years for me, it's going to be how many years for you?
38.
38 years for you. So how we began our ministry is going to be a lot different than how we ended. But we need to be open to this changing spiritual renewal of the Diocese of Youngstown and the church.
And one final comment to the folks in general in anticipation of 75 years, looking forward to 100th.
To go back to that theme, that we're very proud of the past, but we look to the future with faith.
Monsignor John Zuraw, thank you so much for enlightening us about this anniversary, and we look forward to the many celebrations that will take place within that anniversary year.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
Spotlight has been a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Korda.